Final moments of Arcane Season 1 paid honor to the classic storytelling's method, a cliffhanger, dramatic and exciting ending to an episode of a serial, leaving the audience in suspense and anxious not to miss the next episode. An enormous bomb powered with a stolen gemstone sent by Jinx towards the council headquarters, surely as an aftermath of her immediate grief after having lost Silco, possibly reaches its target as we saw the glass actually breaking apart, taking away any hope it could have been strong enough to handle the blast. At the same time, sheer look of terror and realization occurs on Caitlyn's face, which potentially tells us bomb actually did reach its destination right in front of her eyes, perhaps killing everyone inside, including her mother, which her expression reflected at the time. It is safe to assume some of them still make it. Arcane's way of storytelling doesn't leave any open ends, and characters like Jace or Victor still have to progress, still have major roles to play. In other words, they are protected by plot armor. Yet another dramatic phenomenon in fiction whereby the main character is allowed to survive dangerous situations because they are needed for the plot to continue. Then again, a character like Caitlyn's mother, Council Kiraman, she's pretty much done, maybe even literally. She has no major purpose to serve to the story, as part of her grants was to show us what values she passed on to Caitlyn, what kind of background she had, as opposed to Vi's undercity upbringing. Caitlyn and Vi's situation was already complicated as it is. Caitlyn's part of the Piltover's upper class. She was raised in luxury, wealth, by a powerful counselor. Everything she needed was provided for her. Eventually, she became an enforcer, as she believed in justice and fairness, and strongly considered this to be the best way to protect these values. While doing so, she eventually decided to investigate Jinx, Violet's sister, which ultimately led her to Vi. Vi, on the other hand, comes from the Undercity. Her parents were killed by the enforcers, which caused her to despise both them and most of Piltover's upper class, not believing they could ever offer any real help. She was raised by an adoptive father, Vander, having to learn to provide for herself and others who relied on her, mostly her sister Powder, but also Milo, Echo. She was surely going to eventually fill in Vander's shoes before tragedy occurred and broke them apart. Everything in Vi and Caitlyn's relationship was against them. Conflict of classes, personal differences, what they represented, up and down, white and black, their approach to handling events, Vi's dynamic one and Caitlyn's calm one. Over time, however, they grew closer, and all the boundaries, all the obstacles that might have led to their separation only brought them together. In the meantime, a romantic feeling occurred, and most intimate moments followed. Yet we did not get a direct answer to a question: are they actually together? Are they invested in making this potential relationship work? Or does Vi still want to give up because they're oil and water? Season 1's ending surely did not make it any easier. In fact, it entered new complications and new area of the future bond. From the very beginning of their relation, Jinx was against it. Watching it unfold from afar, she felt threatened and presented openly hostile behavior towards Caitlyn. Not only because she's an enforcer, but most of all because she's close to her sister. Jinx, after being abandoned by Vi not once but twice, first while being told to stay behind during Vander's rescue quest, then after indirectly causing Vander's death, does not seem to believe in her sister's good intentions and expects to be abandoned yet again. Mental state that she's in, it cannot be considered stable. She is showing signs of toxic behavior that leads to her open aggression and antipathy towards anyone she could see as a potential threat to her relationship with Vi. As her resentment escalates, she reaches a climax of this aversion by opening fire towards Violet and Caitlyn, simply because Vi offered a shoulder to rely on to Caitlyn and walked away from the confrontation on the bridge that involved Echo. Which, again, Jinx interpreted as yet another abandonment, and which any normal person would simply consider a normal thing to do. The stage she's in does not allow for her to see things clearly, which, considered her horrible experience and trauma she still surely carries, is understandable to an extent. However, there's only as much as Vi, her sister, can take. Where is the line that, when crossed, would lead to an ultimate estrangement of sisters? Does opening fire towards her and Caitlyn cross it? Does sending a bomb towards the council that leads to possible murder of Caitlyn's mother or Jace's? Is it possible that Vi might eventually turn on Powder, to give up on her? Jinx surely believes she already did, but I think the message behind the story tells us that Vi, led by guilt and a sense of responsibility, will always try to be on Powder's side. She will always try to get to her, to find innocent Powder within guilty Jinx.
Remember who you are, I know! You remember!
But she also does that within reason. One cannot simply ignore the fact that there are consequences to Jinx's action, even if her behavior was caused by very much tragic events. When Powder performs an attack on the bridge and fights Echo, Vi chooses to help wounded Caitlyn. By no means it meant she chose Caitlyn over Powder. It simply shows she holds on to her values and helps someone she deeply cares about when in need. Part of Vi also surely broke when Jinx decided to use a gun against them, and then another part did when she decided to use the gemstone to perform an attack on the council. Before that, she captured Caitlyn, tied her up, and expected Violet to kill her as an ultimate act of supposed love towards her sister. She also suggested she already murdered Caitlyn. These actions were obviously insane, obviously unreasonable. We have to remember though that Jinx is probably suffering from several mental illnesses, and she's deeply traumatized. I would even question if she could be held liable for these actions. Any behavior she might show, we have to acknowledge most of all, next to potential punishment, she does need help. At the same time, she cannot be allowed to just go on murder sprees anytime she feels threatened, anytime she feels like she might lose Vi. It should not be a choice, as many people seem to think it is. It is not a matter of choice. The situation they found themselves in, it cannot be interpreted as a tragic decision Violet needs to make between her sister and her, potential partner. Vi is allowed to fall in love and create a life for herself. Jinx, or should I say Powder, being her sister, is not allowed to sabotage that, cannot expect Vi to not create any other bonds than the one with her, no matter the past. There's a long way ahead of Jinx to possibly become Powder again. That is, if she's not too far gone. A road that needs to teach her that her sister's love is guaranteed without any strings attached, but also without having to make her constantly choose between others and her. It's not a competition. If not Caitlyn, then it would be someone else. Although it is Caitlyn. It is not rational to keep expecting Vi to pick. She can be in love, and she can still love her sister. At the same time, there is also a long road ahead of Vi. A road towards forgiving herself and truly believing what Caitlyn once said.
What happened to her? It's not your fault.
She carries that burden and continues to feel responsible for Jinx's actions. She once abandoned her sister when she needed her the most, and she has to live with that. That guilt might escalate in Season 2. Vi found herself in an impossible scenario. On one hand, she knows her sister is lost, that Powder turned into Jinx, and without a doubt she needed to be on her side. She believed that she had to do whatever it took to save her. On the other hand, Jinx keeps doing things that are truly horrible. Again, it can be explained if you're willing to be understanding. We know how many terrible things happened to Powder. We know how Silco shaped her and influenced her. We know how he projected his own lost brotherhood to Vander towards Powder's lost sisterhood to Vi. But such behaviors need to be stopped. The question is, will Vi decide to do it? Will she help Caitlyn with her without a doubt revenge quest? If Jinx kills Caitlyn's mother, is that an obstacle between Vi and Caitlyn that this time cannot be removed? We got some hints about that in Season 2 teaser.
Every way I slice it, if I go after your sister alone, one of us comes back in a box.
I can do this myself. No one else needs to get hurt.
I'm glad it's you. Had to be you.
There is no doubt an aftermath to Jinx's bomb blast was death, maybe several deaths. No matter who else dies, it's safe to assume Caitlyn lost at least one parent, her mother, who is directly within the reach of Jinx's bomb, her story already told, her face transitioning to Caitlyn's one, visually hinting she does die right in front of Caitlyn's eyes. Caitlyn is no longer going after Jinx because she believes in justice and fairness. not because she wants to prove she's a worthy enforcer, not one protected by her wealthy parents. These reasons are in the past. She already proved herself worthy. And while her shared journey was always personal to Vi, it became personal to Caitlyn the moment Jinx performed her final act of destruction and pulled the trigger. Season 2 teaser does not leave much space for speculation. If Caitlyn does decide to confront Jinx alone, one of them won't make it alive.
I thought maybe you could love me like you used to. Even though I'm different. But you changed too.
Now, I couldn't help but wonder, in what way did Vi change exactly? And for a while I couldn't find an answer. If anything, she changed for better. She spent years in prison and not everyone acknowledges what she went through. A long time of uncertainty, loneliness, years of not knowing what happened to Powder, getting regularly beaten up. Of course it changes a person. She's more careful, less trusting, more vulnerable. Yet she still remained the same brave, unremarkable, witty, funny, caring person that she was before. What did Jinx mean? If anything, she probably meant the fact prior to the tragic events of the night when Silco took Powder in, Vi would have done anything for Powder. If Powder jumped off a bridge, Vi would jump right behind her. If Powder stepped into fire, Vi would follow right in. Back then, Powder was just a child and Vi was the only family she had left. She was both her mother, her father, her sister. But time has passed. Things have changed. And that is no longer the case. Powder changed too. She became Jinx. But it's not just because of that Violet does not want to follow her blindly anywhere she goes. Not just because of her obviously evil actions. It's also because of the fact she is no longer a small kid. And right now, they might actually stand on opposite sides. With Silco gone, and the criminal part of the Undercity will be most likely ruled by Sevika. Jinx is gonna become a highly wanted criminal. And with Marcus gone, considering League of Legends lore, Caitlyn might be reinstalled as an enforcer in charge of chasing down whoever was responsible for attacking the council. Jinx. Up until now, Caitlyn did try to support Vi in her search for Powder. She did not oppose when Vi stayed behind to look for Powder. She stayed reasonable, understanding towards Vi's situation. She even tried to lie on behalf of Jinx in front of the council, just because she's Vi's sister. That position might change with a potential act of killing Councillor Karaman and others. Let's ask again then. If Caitlyn goes after Jinx, will Vi follow her? In Season 2 teaser, she points out that if she goes alone, either her or Jinx will not make it. Which means that this time going after Jinx is ultimate. There will be no compromises. Jinx needs to be stopped forever, and in Caitlyn's perspective, her mother potentially needs to be avenged. Caitlyn's up until now safe world collapsed along with the council's headquarters, and it might change her to a point she will no longer hold back. Caitlyn's mother's potential death might also become a paradox that will bring Caitlyn and Vi closer together. Caitlyn will no longer be driven by her sense of justice, but also by guilt she did not stop Jinx in time to save her mother, and that is surely something she might have in common with Vi. But on the other hand, should Vi even feel guilty at all? She did everything in her power to stop Jinx. Even she is her sister, she presented their case to the council. If you think about it, it was only Caitlyn and Vi that were remotely close to stopping Jinx. And Powder's ultimate transformation, contrary to what she said, cannot be blamed on either of them. Which leads me to thinking they might actually cooperate in Season 2. If Caitlyn does decide to go after Jinx, and without a doubt she will, I think Vi will follow, because she feels like it is her responsibility, because she still wants to find Powder within Jinx, because she cares about Caitlyn, but also because evil acts need to be stopped, and this is just as much her responsibility now as it is Caitlyn's.
You've got a good heart. Don't ever lose it.
Despite it all, I can tell. You have a good heart.
Vi is a good person, with a good heart, as we are already told. And while her priority was to support Powder, she will never be on board with death of innocent people. Vi claiming she can do this alone will surely meet with Caitlyn's reassurance that she won't let her go alone. They have been supporting each other, helping each other all throughout season 1, and I very much doubt they will abandon one another now when situation became much more dramatic. But as season 2 teaser suggests, the final confrontation might happen between two people only.
I'm glad it's you. Had to be you.
Who is Jinx talking to? Caitlin? Vi? Even though Jinx's unhealthy obsession with Caitlin kept escalating, which could suggest she does mean her, as she sees Caitlin as an obstacle, Jinx still does consider Vi to be her main focus, and so naturally it could be the sisters' encounter that closes down this line of story. Could this lead to a death of a beloved character? Would Vi decide to actually kill Jinx? Or maybe she's going to be given one last chance to prove her love to Powder, and this time not by killing someone else she cares about. We will find answers to these questions in season 2, and without a doubt it will be just as epic as season 1. If Arcane taught us anything, it's that it's possible to make satisfying piece of media, one that tells us fulfilling storylines that keep us on our toes, but also sometimes break our hearts. But I'd love to believe, and maybe it's naivete speaking, that Vi will find Powder within Jinx, at the same time saving her relationship with Caitlin. It depends what kind of story Arcane wants to tell. Would it be a parallel to Vander abandoning Silco? Would it be very much Cain and Abel, like killing your sibling allegory? Or is it going to be, perhaps, a tale of forgiveness? There is much to forgive for, and if each one of them, Jinx, Caitlin, and Vi, finally drops the burden, they might just be okay. Thanks so much for watching, I really appreciate it. Stay safe guys, this was Ola from Stop Me O channel. Bye.